Belarus has made a major announcement that could reshape the Russia-Ukraine war. President Lukashenko is signaling stronger alignment with Moscow, possibly allowing deeper military cooperation or even direct involvement. On the outside, this looks like Belarus stepping into the conflict more openly, but inside the country most people do not want war and Lukashenko is under pressure to balance loyalty to Russia with fear of domestic backlash. Militarily, Belarus adds strategic geography but its actual combat ability is limited. The move is presented as a defensive step, yet it risks making Belarus a bigger target for NATO and bringing heavy economic, political, and military costs. The key point is that Belarus' decision is less about strength and more about survival. Lukashenko is trying to protect his regime, but in doing so he ties Belarus' future even closer to Russia. Hello everyone, welcome back to the World Conflict Monitor channel. Please subscribe to my channel for more detailed updates and deep explanations on the world's most pressing geopolitical conflicts. Today we dive into a dramatic development shaking Eastern Europe. Belarus' big announcement, a move that has sent shockwaves across the Russia-Ukraine war and may alter the entire strategic balance of the conflict. Before we go into a full breakdown, let's begin with a short summary of the story. Belarus, long seen as Russia's closest ally in the region, has recently declared a new position that combines both political and military dimensions. This announcement signals a potential shift in Belarus' involvement, one that could affect Ukraine's defensive posture, Russia's war strategy, and NATO's long-term plans in Eastern Europe. The world is watching closely because even the smallest realignment in Belarus can magnify into significant consequences across the front lines and diplomatic corridors. On the exterior level, Belarus has always presented itself as a firm supporter of Moscow's vision. Since the war began in 2022, President Alexander Lukashenko allowed Russian forces to use Belarusian soil as a launchpad for early offensives, especially the attempted advance on Kyiv. For months, Belarus appeared to be nothing more than Russia's rear base, providing safe territory for logistics, missile launches, and troop movements. But the new announcement changes the external appearance of Belarus' role. For the first time, Minsk is positioning itself not only as a silent partner but as a visible stakeholder in the war's outcome. The exterior projection is carefully designed. Belarus presents this as a defensive measure, a response to what it calls Western pressure and NATO expansion, but the international perception is entirely different. For Europe, this looks like Belarus opening the door to deeper conflict involvement, potentially even deploying its own forces beyond symbolic exercises. The exterior image is one of a small country caught between loyalty to Moscow and the fear of triggering NATO retaliation, but nonetheless stepping further into the fire. Moving to the interior, we see the short but telling reality. Inside Belarus, the population has been weary of war, with polls and reports suggesting most Belarusians oppose direct involvement in Ukraine. Lukashenko himself has struggled to maintain authority since the contested 2020 elections, relying heavily on Russian support to keep his regime stable. Internally, this announcement reflects not popular will but political necessity. Lukashenko cannot afford to alienate Moscow, which guarantees his survival, but he also fears a domestic backlash if Belarusian soldiers are sent into Ukraine. The interior dynamics, in short, are tense, fragile, and contradictory. What appears as a bold strategic move on the outside is, on the inside, a gamble made by a leader balancing between dependence on Russia and the silent resistance of his own people. Now let's look at performance. If we treat Belarus' announcement as a performance test of its geopolitical machinery, we can analyze how effectively it can execute its role. Belarus' military is relatively small compared to Russia's vast army, but it is well trained and positioned geographically in a highly strategic location. Performance-wise, Belarus can offer Russia logistical depth, airspace, staging grounds, and now possibly direct troop contributions. Its announcement also enhances Russia's psychological warfare by signaling that Ukraine might face another front. However, the actual combat performance of Belarusian forces is untested in modern warfare. Most of their training and doctrine is still Soviet-era, and their limited combat experience raises doubts about how effective they would be in Ukraine's high-intensity battlefields. Thus, the performance looks strong on paper but questionable in practice, and the West knows this. Ukraine, too, understands that the threat of Belarus may be more about distraction and pressure than actual battlefield strength. Still, the psychological impact of this announcement performs powerfully, forcing Ukraine to allocate resources to its northern border and possibly diverting attention from the Donbass and southern fronts. The safety features of this announcement reveal its defensive framing. Belarus insists that it is acting to secure its sovereignty against external threats, portraying NATO as the aggressor. In this narrative, the safety features are about deterrence. By aligning even more openly with Russia, Belarus hopes to shield itself from regime change attempts, Western sanctions pressure, and NATO encirclement. But in reality, these safety features may fail. Instead of securing Belarus, the announcement could expose it to greater danger. If Belarus allows nuclear weapons to be stationed on its soil, as was hinted earlier in 2023, it makes itself a priority target for NATO in case of escalation. If Belarusian troops cross into Ukraine, they risk becoming casualties in a war most Belarusians do not support. The so-called safety features may therefore work only in theory, while practically making the nation more vulnerable to instability, sanctions, and possibly direct confrontation. The unique selling points of this announcement are centered on Belarus leverage. Unlike other small states aligned with Moscow, Belarus has geography as its trump card. Positioned directly north of Ukraine and bordering NATO members Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia, it holds a unique place in the regional map. This gives Minsk a bargaining chip. By threatening to open a new axis of conflict, it can command international attention far beyond its actual military strength. The unique selling point is also Lukashenko's ability to play mediator when convenient. By making this announcement, he signals loyalty to Russia, but at the same time he keeps doors open for negotiation with the West by suggesting Belarus as a potential bridge, not just a pawn. This duality, being both a frontline state and a potential intermediary, is Belarus' main unique selling point, and it makes every announcement from Minsk echo loudly in global capitals. If we consider the price, Belarus is paying a high cost for this alignment. Economically, the country is already under heavy sanctions from the European Union and the United States. Trade routes are limited, foreign investment has dried up, and its economy relies almost entirely on Russian subsidies, cheap energy, and loans. Politically, the price is international isolation, with Lukashenko shunned by nearly all Western leaders and institutions. Militarily, the price could soon become blood. If Belarusian troops enter Ukraine, casualties will mount, and public resentment could destabilize Lukashenko's grip on power. The price also includes sovereignty itself. By making such announcements, Belarus shows the world that its foreign policy is essentially dictated by Moscow. While the short-term survival of Lukashenko's regime is secured, the long-term independence of Belarus as a nation is compromised. The hidden price is the erosion of Belarusian statehood into a satellite permanently tied to Russia's fate. Finally, we reach the conclusion. Belarus' big announcement is more than just words, it is a signal, a maneuver, and a gamble rolled into one. It reshapes perceptions of the Russia-Ukraine war, raising new fears of escalation and widening the circle of possible participants. For Russia, this is a win. It shows its ally standing firm, creating the illusion of broader support. For Ukraine, it is a challenge. More troops must guard the northern border, more resources must be stretched thin. For NATO, it is both a warning and an opportunity. a warning that the war could spill closer to its borders, but an opportunity to strengthen defenses in Poland and the Baltics, thereby tightening the alliance. For Lukashenko, it is survival, a dangerous but perhaps necessary step to keep Moscow's backing. The announcement twists the war's narrative, reminding the world that this conflict is not just about Russia and Ukraine but about the entire fragile balance of Eastern Europe. The World Conflict Monitor will continue to track these developments, and as always, we urge you to stay informed, because in wars like these, announcements are not mere statements, they are moves on the grand chessboard that decide the fate of nations.